okay. And we have a new office. Andre is the director of our Office of Access and Equity. We're growing in leaps and bounds, and we're needing to learn how to do disability services and all of this other stuff. And we have one very visually impaired student, and we've been struggling our way through. And we have a new situation with her where she's going to be on campus for a solid week with a dog. We haven't had that yet. So we just really, I know you were going to try and get some information out of us and see what we do know already, but maybe we can just introduce ourselves to you first so you know who we are. So, Chris?
Hi, excuse me for bringing my lunch, but that's kind of it.
Not a problem.
Chris Helgeson, I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs.
My name is Andre Cohen, and I'm in the Office of Access and Equity.
You are the office.
I am the Office of Access and Equity.
And I'm Dan Haugen. I serve the school as president.
And I'm Jeanette Nelson, who we met earlier, and usually at Centra.
I'm Vicki Marson, I'm the librarian. Debbie Velasco, registrar.
You know.
And I am head director of the mission. And this is the student services meeting, as we're all part of that group. And then Kathy, who's coming, she is the business vice president of financial affairs. And she'll be here in a moment. So, here we are with a whole bunch of brand new, knowing nothing about anything situation. So, whatever you can help us with.
Well, vision loss, whether use the term, some people use the term vision impairment, some people use blindness. That's individually based. More academically, I tend to break that out as visually impaired, meaning significant vision loss up to legal blindness, and then blindness being 2200. So what you can see at 200 feet, that person needs to be 20 feet away to see it the same way you do. Or it could mean a restriction in field, where there's only 20 degrees of field. So with that, vision loss is very individualized. Even from the condition, even if two people have the same condition, they may not experience that vision loss the same way. Typically, larger, bolder print is better. Unless you have the narrowing of the field, then larger is actually worse. So really it's individualized, and give yourselves a pat on the back for asking the questions about how do we find out more information, because it is all individualized. You need to ask each individual kind of what works best with them, because sometimes that large print isn't better. Sometimes inverse contrast helps, where there's a black background with white text. That reduces glare. Something as simple as blue paper also reduces glare. Yellow paper increases contrast. So even handouts. I remember I served the state as a psychologist for state services for the blind, and I primarily do testing. I also do some support groups, and then on my off time I also teach down at Minnesota State Mankato, an evening class of sensitivity to disability. But on my travels throughout the state in testing, I ran into an individual who's a college student, and I had him read something on large print with blue paper. And I said, oh, I'm going to let you answer that. I'll step out. I came back in 10 minutes. He was a 21, 22-year-old guy. He was crying. I'm like, what's wrong? He said, I've been able to read for 15 minutes straight. I've never been able to do that in my life because of this blue paper. So something as simple as what you copy stuff on makes an incredible difference. But that's individualized. For some people, that blue paper is too muted. They need the contrast. that's kind of my opening. Is there any questions or discussion or?
Part of,
Go ahead.
after you.
Well, I was just thinking as we approach these individuals, we want to do so with sensitivity, and what is a good way to introduce ourselves and to ask the person about their experience with vision loss? Or what should we stay away from?
It's always good to say, what accommodations do you typically use to access print, to access? The computer may not be much of an involvement because that would be something on their end. There are software programs that you can purchase to enlarge the text. There are other programs that read whatever is on the screen. But the screen readers have to be, the website or whatever you're going to has to be programmed appropriately, and rather than just say picture, has to have a description on it. But probably is just ask, what accommodations do you think you would need? We're going to need to access, you know, this video or that paper. Sometimes the format of the document. We now have readable PDF files, which is something new that's opened up a lot because PDFs are that picture of that document is inaccessible to screen readers. But with readable PDFs, that's been helpful. Am I kind of answering your question, Jeanette?
Well, yeah, and just some kind of pitfalls to avoid, you know, just kind of how blind are you? You know, kind of dumb questions like that.
Yeah. And I guess it's more of how do you access it than, because if it's, you know, they come up and say, well, I'm 2400 in one eye.
Yeah.
So where do we go with that? So it's easier to say, how do you access? How do you print? How do you access this? You know, if we were to show a video, a handout in class, how would you like me to provide that to you? Typically in our agency, I have some coworkers with a variety of levels of vision loss. Some individuals do get their information in Braille. Some do get it in large print. And then mostly, though, people want it electronically beforehand.
So they can use video.
They can use their computer to access that document. So most everything's on a computer now, so it works really well. You just forward it to them. As far as documents, videos should be audio described.
What does that mean?
It, like in a movie, you may hear another voice saying the person picks up a piece of paper in his left hand and walks across the screen. You can hear that in a different voice, so that you get the visual information, because that may be important to the story.
Okay.
So is that generally available, or somebody, the faculty's using something from YouTube and, no?
Typically not. The audio description is usually not the closed caption, usually is, with the writing of the words on the screen. But some of the visual things may or may not be important. It, you know, may not be important she's wearing a yellow blouse with a white skirt.
Right.
But if she's manipulating something with her hands that you need to know, then that's important information. So a lot of it is based on the content.
Are closed captions so screen readable?
That's a good question.
particular video piece that is really important, and the audio is not available, then creating closed captioning description of okay, something if that is.
Yeah, I know in my class I do show DVDs, and I always turn on the audio description and the closed captioning, just to give my students access to having both of those things. That some of them don't like it, as well as some people with vision loss don't like it either. So that's just too much information. This is how I'm used to watching TV. I'm good without it. So again, that's individualized as well.
So part of what we've been trying to do is figure out what services do we need, how to be ready for different situations that might come our way, and I don't know if there's as you're talking about it, makes a lot of sense that it really is up to each individual. We can't say if we have a student with this condition, we'll always do this or this with that. So part of what we've done is just allocate some money over here to respond to particular needs, but we've got some cute computer keyboards that are yellow with black type on them, so I think those have been helpful for Megan. Other stuff that we can start kind of budgeting for, or things that we might want to have on hand that might just kind of generally be helpful.
I know in the past a lot of people have used digital recorders in case they don't catch everything, or while taking notes in person, so they could review.
Like an audio recorder?
An audio recorder,
Okay.
to review what was said and go over their notes again. The computers in accessible electronic formats has just changed the scope of things immensely, because that having something in print did impede access. So electronically, as far as most students tend to have their accommodations already prepared for themselves, a screen reader or screen enlargement software already on their laptop or computer. They tend to have a note-taking device, usually that laptop. The area that I work with at State Services for the Blind is the vocational workforce development unit. So we try to prepare people for that job, and if that job includes going to school, we go through and say, what do you think you would need so that you're able to access those classes. However, not every individual with vision loss chooses to go through our services, and maybe just like, hey, I don't need that assistance, I know where I'm going, and this is what I want to do. And those individuals may be a bit at a disadvantage knowing all the access technology that's available.
Right.
But a lot of it is individualized.
Is there certain technology you feel like is most commonly used? Whether it's already whether you're giving it to them or that you know that it's...
The screen enlargement and the screen reader, the two main, the main programs there, JAWS, which is the screen reader, Magic and Zoom Text are probably window-eyes.
What's that?
We have Zoom Text.
Your Zoom Text.
And Zoom Text enlarges the text, and remember that when you enlarge it, you see a smaller portion of it.
So JAWS, Zoom Text, and what was the other one?
Magic and window eyes.
And they all are screen readers or screen enlargers, or they each have a different...
Window eyes and JAWS are screen readers. Zoom Text and Magic are screen enlargement. And I know you can there, I know you can get a site license for those as well as the individual license for those products.
Now, you said that those people who use the services, of the state services for the blind, they are a little bit better prepared. Are there any eligibility criteria for somebody to get these services?
You have to have vision loss with 20/60 or worse in the better eye, which technically means you can have a driver's license. It may have restrictions on it, but you can still be eligible for our services. The vision impairment must impede with your ability to get a job, and you must be deemed eligible or to benefit from our services. So
Meaning financially or
that we could provide something to help you get employed, because our entire focus is to get that job, but it doesn't necessarily mean get a job immediately. Get the job that best suits your abilities, capabilities, priorities, interests.
So the reason I ask that, just hypothetically, we have somebody would come and they have significant visual loss, and they say, well, and we say, okay, what would help you? What do you use? Well, I don't know, I haven't been out of school for that many years, and then can we refer somebody, say, okay, you can get the services with an assessment and some help at that place, and then just refer people.
Absolutely, absolutely can refer to us, and we have 5 AT or access technology specialists who serve the state. They're up to date on all the technology that's available, and if there's technical questions, I can have one of them come and meet with y'all, or they would have access, the individual students or clients of our agency would have access to those AT specialists to ensure that they have the best technology to meet their needs.
Are there residency requirements? Like with state grants, you have to be a Minnesota resident is defined in a particular way?
Yeah, you have to reside in the state.
And
But
do you
each
know like
state,
for how long it takes to establish, but there are rules like that we
Yeah.
have to investigate.
Yeah.
But you were just about to say, if we
state-
have students from out of state, each state has
a vocational rehabilitation.
at least some accommodation.
Yes, vocational rehabilitation is nationwide. It's actually there's funding in place. We just got a new Workforce Investment Act passed for 2015. But there are in each state a vocational rehabilitation office. Minnesota happens to be what we call a separate office, where we have general vocational rehabilitation and then a blind agency. Wisconsin has a combined agency. Anyone with a disability who wants employment would go to vocational rehabilitation.
What's the how does there's a big nonprofit for the blind down on roughly
Franklin
and Lindale.
That's Vision Loss Resources.
And how do you relate to Vision Loss Resources?
Great question. Probably 50 years ago, that used to be the Society for the Blind. And there was the Minneapolis Society for the Blind and the St. Paul Society for the Blind. They combined to form Vision Loss Resources. They are a training agency that provides training to individuals, what we call adjustment to blindness training, or more vision loss techniques. How do you get around? How do you use a white cane? How do you cook? How do you clean? How do you use the computer non-visually? How do you do leisure activities? How do you go to the gym non-visually? So we do send we individually look at all our clients and say, okay, if this is going to be your job as whatever, a lawyer, you're going to need to live independently. Let's get you those skills so that you know how, and that training can take 6 to 9 months.
Very complimentary resources then to what you
Very
guys are doing.
Yes. And then from there, we developed that plan of getting that individual to the lawyer, to becoming employed as a lawyer. So now that you can be independently, you can live independently, get to school, let's get you in school. How can we support you through school? You're going to need a laptop. You're going to need this access. There are 3 agencies in the state that provide that type of training that Vision Loss Resources does. Another one is Blind Incorporated, and blindness stands for blindness learning in new dimensions. And then there's the Duluth Lighthouse for the blind.
Where's the second one located?
Blind Inc. is actually right by the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, so a couple miles away.
So it's real close to it.
Yep. So if you're ever around in that area and you see individuals walking around with blindfolds and white canes,
Yeah.
those are students.
And do those tend to complement vision loss resources too, or are they overlapping?
Well, blindness is surprisingly can have a lot of different ways of doing things, of accomplishing things. There's some differences. Vision loss resources, they tend to support like a shorter white cane that's foldable, whereas Blind Inc. likes a lighter weight, longer cane that's not foldable. So there's some philosophy differences.
But as far as how they intersect with you, which is probably the most important thing to us, you know, that would be complementary to what you're doing.
Yes, we work collaboratively with all of the, and then we also have individual trainers that, you know, I know how to cook, but I haven't used a computer, I don't know how to type, I don't know the keyboard. We can send a trainer out to that individual. You just need help right there. So, you know, if you happen to notice a student that their computer skills are not to par.
Yeah. Well, we're dealing with their whole lives here, so, you know, it's helpful to know that. What else is out there?
That there's lots of trainers out there to assist with that.
Can I ask a kind of a concern, very practical kind of question for our faculty? I had 2 experiences. We had a gal coming in for a visit, and she had a seeing eye dog, and I went to say hello, and she said, "Don't talk to her." And I backed off because I realized I shouldn't be. But our current student's dog is very friendly and is going to be spending a week in the classroom, morning and afternoon. He gets up and wanders around and makes some of the other people in the classroom who are not dog friendly very nervous. And so I think the faculty are going to maybe need some advice on how to control the situation and not make our poor vision impaired student uncomfortable. You know, the dog is sweet as can be, but there are people who don't appreciate that. You know, it's going to be a little tentative. We've already had it happen once or twice in an evening class where somebody was uncomfortable. It's only 3 hours, now it's going to be 7. Any advice?
My advice there would be to maybe even have a little in-service with the class. If that student would be open to doing that, I would say it's fully within your boundaries to say you need to keep that dog by your side. It cannot be wandering. Most people do kind of put their foot on the leash, so the dog stays nearby and quiet. It is working, so you should not pet it or distract it. It's hard to do because there's a lot of dogs around in my work environment too. Typically, what the rule of thumb is, when that harness is on with the handle, that dog is working. If that harness is off and they're just on a leash and collar, then they're off work, and you can pet them if the owner says it's okay.
So you're saying maybe a little in-service with the faculty and the student?
And the student and maybe even the class, that,
first.
you know, the dog is working, so don't bother it, don't distract it. But that person who owns the dog needs to be in control of the dog, and it's not acceptable for it to be roaming around.
Were we gonna ask something?
Nope, that was it.
Question just in general around disabilities with our students. How can we encourage them to come to us to let us know if they need special accommodations? Some might be very hesitant, or shameful about that, and they may not ask, and they may struggle.
I know personally I have that in all my syllabi. I just stated, if you need accommodations, please see accessibility services or myself. Of course, I certainly broach the topic of disability in my class, and I have had students come up and say, just want to let you know I've got Tourette's, and I'd ask, how do you experience it? And say, well, I might get fidgety or jittery. Okay, is there anything I can do to help out? No. So maybe even just mentioning that, if you do have any accommodation needs. And one of the nice things, and I think it makes a statement that Mankato did, was they used to have, and I'll compliment you as well, we used to have disability services. Now we have accessibility services, because it's not about disability, it's about access. So I compliment you on already being at the forefront of having access services, accessibility. So I think you're ahead of the game already in knowing that the student just needs access, regardless of disability or not disability. You need access to that information. How do we make that happen?
Well, and I think that, just to take that further, I mean, as long as it's in the syllabus, but it's up to the instructors too, I think, to, like anything in the syllabus, to really emphasize that, that like, I know this is a topic that's sensitive for a lot of people, but know that if you have the X, Y, Z, please come to me, email, whatever it is. I think just the fact that you're having a conversation makes you more approachable as an instructor, not just having it written in there, but
Yep.
if it's 2 minutes on the first night.
Yeah, I also think the other side to that is that when people start failing miserably, they can't go back to, I have a disability in this area if we haven't talked about it ahead of time. There may be some things we can mitigate, but I know, in a certain couple of examples where students have tried to use that as a way to get out of the responsibility of either doing the work or coming up with that. And so so there has to be that balance too, that we're open to that, but we still have to hold people accountable. And so I think it would be interesting to see some best practices or policies that have been written around having an access animal, because I don't know that I've seen anything in writing that says, here are our expectations for an assistant animal, or how you as a student should respond to an an animal that is a assistant, like knowing the harness being on or off, and that kind of stuff. So if you know of those things and you can send those to us, that would be very helpful.
Sure.
Reed, I was thinking about something similar, maybe in a little bit more general sort of way. If you know, the best practices, call them for lack of a better term, that higher education is trying to execute in a variety of different areas as it concerns disability or vision impairment in specific. I mean, that would be helpful for us to have those resources or have a sense of where to go.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are best practices that we're not aware of. You mentioned a lot of technology, because that's not going to surprise anybody that I don't know certain pieces of technology that are out there, but you've mentioned a lot of technology that I didn't even know was available conceptually. It almost sounds like Star Wars technology relative to. I have two. I have a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law who are legally blind, and I thought I knew a fair amount about some of those kinds of issues, but
Yeah, well, technology is it's just amazing. We just found out this week we got 2 trial devices. They're distributed by the federal government as a way to make paper money accessible. They're called iBill. And they'll be distributed free to everyone who's blind or visually impaired. We're taking names and addresses in our office, otherwise you can, was it the Treasury? To get 1 free currency reader for everyone. That's the government's solution to making paper currency accessible. And you just slide it in there. It's about the size of a key fob. You slide the bill in there and it says $1, 5,
read
10.
audibly?
Audibly. Yep. So technology is
Well,
moving
and
forward.
so again, the request is if there's ways that we can stay abreast of the technology that allows us to accommodate, that would be really helpful, information to have.
Another question I have, with the screen readers, how would that, let's say, the pace, the speed, and the amount, as far as attention span, for somebody who uses screen reader to read, let's say, 10 pages of text, be different from somebody with an 8th grade reading level, for example, reading the same text? Going to be faster, or do people adjust it? How does it come? Because I'm just thinking in whether it's online classes or just classes where we send, say, okay, read this article, then, and we allow a certain amount of time for that, then how do we know, is it enough, is it not enough, is it too little time, too much time?
Typically, that kind of evens out. Most of my coworkers and many of our clients who have experience with the screen readers where it's reading to them, listen to it so fast I can't even understand it. It just sounds like the chipmunks going by. But they understand everything. So some of their reading speeds might actually be quicker than visual print reading. And as far as time, the nice thing, I know a lot of students, again, technology, read their books on the bus because, they have it in their phone.
Just out of curiosity, I can't help but ask, so is the speed at which something is played, does that reflect one's hearing acuity getting better and better? I mean, sometimes you hear that certain senses get stronger as others get weaker. And it sounds like chipmunks to you, but it's because their hearing acuity has improved, or?
I think it's more that's just they're able to use those brain cells more. I know that when people who do read Braille, which is steadily declining because of digital audible technology, that fires the visual cortex in the brain. So those different brain cells are compensating for those areas. And kind of my own experiences, I've had 11 weeks under the blindfold, running around out in downtown, in malls.
That was part of the training.
That was part of my training, yeah. And there is so much that we take in visually that does take a lot of computation and, okay, is this important, not important that we're doing that? When you have the blindfold on or with no vision, that frees you up to hear, okay, the vent's on the left side. Okay, a water fountain just started on the right. Where you pay attention to different things. But as far as like the reading, that's just their normal, that's how they access the information, and they could hear it so quickly that you can want to speed things up, get through it.
Another maybe, again, more practical question, and maybe when you do testing with people with visual impairment, like the typical types of questions, say the fill-in, like in quizzes, for example, or multiple choice.
Mhm.
So what are the pros and cons as far as like the accessibility and, so how's that?
Yeah, the accessibility, I'm gonna assume most of those quizzes are gonna be on electronically.
Yeah.
Have the radio buttons marked if it's multiple choice, true or false. Or, always have, like, true is your first answer, false is your second, so that they know which button they're hitting. There's a programming way to, which I'm not up to date on how to make sure that radio button indicates that the button is meaning true, not button, there's the word true, there's another button, then false. You don't know which one to read. So fill in the blank might be a little simpler and easier for that individual to fill out, knowing that you have the valid result, that that's what they intended to say. I intended to say false to number 2.
Okay.
So I wrote out the word false or put in an F.
So a question along the lines, because we had a student that we were kind of making accommodations as we went. So for like an online class, for example, with the piece, the speed of reading, what we were just talking about. So in terms of, in general, of course, there's always exceptions to this either way. You need to read X amount of chapters and then have a response, all students by this Friday. In terms of the reading, it might be the same or quicker, but then to take that and then to type out a paper or a large reflection, what should we expect?
Same thing.
Same
thing.
I know in terms of, again, probably overcompensate this way because you just,
Yeah.
that's.
Any accommodation on the instructor's part may need to be in formatting,
Yeah.
that if
Yeah.
the margins aren't set up or it's not indented or that would be more of that speech program just doesn't provide that information to the individual to know how it's formatted. But the content, there's...
Yeah, no, and that was, I think that was, we talked about the syllabus, was trying to get all the syllabuses under the same kind of formatting, same readability, same more continuity between classes.
Yeah.
But the question came up, is it reasonable for us to think that we should make an accommodation in terms of number of words?
Yeah.
You know, if the post is supposed to be 350 or 250, extra time?
No. This is a standard.
Yeah.
So this is more educational standard and it's accessibility, basically, giving them proper opportunity to be able to achieve the same educational standards.
And I think I found that true in the
That makes
most common disability or accessibility areas. It's more about here's the services we have under technology, note-taking. Didn't mean less or more time, like in K-12, it's more time, more, different. This was more about here's the services we provide, doesn't matter what your disability area, because certainly those services apply whether you're talking about a blind person who's vision impaired or someone who's got extreme impulsivity. They might have similar accommodation needs.
But you're saying that the technology is not enough of an impairment that they would need extra time or shorter assignments?
Yes.
I would say not. If you're going to be doing, like a timed quiz, I'd kind of want to start their time when they had access to that, rather than say, okay, here it is when they.
But if they, and you guys work together on your online, you were colleagues?
Yeah, we were cohorts.
Okay, so you did online studies, yeah. So when students have got posts due twice a week, we were trying to figure out, okay, so does this person need a little bit more time to read through it? Okay, good to know.
Those are your standards. The only thing is, the short amount of time, especially for an individual who maybe accesses stuff more visually, it may take them more time to get, because they're only seeing this part of the page.
Sure.
that may take them more time in, a 20-minute timed quiz. That would be an
Well,
accommodation.
I think what we were talking about was
But
the responses to the
response,
posts.
no, that's,
No?
maintain your standard.
How does, and I know it's a tiny technical question, if it's a table created in a Word document, how's it available on screen reader? Just had a conversation this morning with somebody.
Not always well.
Okay.
The tables are not always well. It can be very confusing, what lines up in a linear. So the least number of boxes, table pieces you can have, the better.
When somebody uses a screen reader and they read an article and it's a research and there's like tables and graphs and things like that, what does the screen reader say?
It just reads right across. So,
So
that
it's-
14th number was what? I mean, that's a lot to
So it approaches it
mentally
as a, okay,
keep
So-
track of.
okay, so it doesn't distinguish as a,
Yeah, you can't go to like the third column, go down to find the fourth number.
so it's something to keep in mind.
It
Okay,
just
so if
reads
there's a
across.
table or anything, then it should be done, it's almost like with a video, so there would be a narration of some sort. The following table explains this, explains something like that. Okay.
Another accommodation that many students have is having a reader to do those things for you, to say, okay, you know what, I need to find out what is, X and Y of this, on this table. Tell me what that is visually, not that the reader does the work for them, but provides them the information that they can access visually.
So then the fill-in quizzes are not a really good idea. But because if it's a fill-in quiz, like where even if it's electronic, if it's a sentence and there's a word missing in the middle and the student is supposed to fill in, so the screen reader will read it as what, like that's
Yeah, it will read a blank, and that's fairly common, because that's how you fill out forms, and,
okay, so it's not only
not filling.
the student responsibility then would be, because my experience was with the student was a fill-in quiz based on a book, and the student was done like in about half the time that everybody else was done, and I said, wow, you're really good, and the student was honest enough to say that the student used scanning of the book,
Scan the book.
and found all the right answers. Fast, because the machines are faster.
Yep.
What did you say the classes that you teach at Mankato?
Sensitivity to disability.
Okay, and so if you gave us a 3 or 4 minute overview of what you cover in that class,
Well,
or the main highlights? Or
the main highlights is it's experiential, so we have people with disabilities come and speak to the class, tell about their lives. This week, I'm going to have my coworker who was born without arms come in and show them how he drives, how he swims, how he fishes, how he writes, how he drinks coffee, types, gets it all done. He's had some very high-level jobs. Probably the highest was he reported to the commissioner of our department, who reported to our governor. I mean, just talk about his life. He loves to fish. And then the students ask him questions. It's multicultural. We learn about, how to use the 4D approach when we approach a person with a disability. What do you detect? What do you observe? What are your feelings? Doesn't mean you need to act on your feelings. What are your feelings? And then we decide what we're going to do based on length of relationship, impact, the situation. Then we're going to act, and then we're going to debrief about that act. And every student must interview a person with a disability and talk about how they use that approach It's also a writing intensive course, so they have to do a term paper of 20 pages about how that 4D approach, detect, decide, do, debrief, and then we also talk about prejudices, discrimination against people with disabilities, how that came about, how we can combat that, and just get them more used to talking about disability.
And what are the disability areas you cover? Is that more generic, or is it the visual disabilities, or is it the non-visual? Because I think the impact is sort of...
We kind of treat it as a whole, and
Okay.
then I do have the students do a presentation about a certain impairment like multiple sclerosis. Tell me a little bit about the etiology, how an individual experiences it, what are some of the additional prejudices about that. So that we get a little balance of a variety of disabilities that the students have interest in, as well as kind of the global culture of disabilities.
I had an experience. I used to be the administrator of the law school admissions test, and we had a visually impaired person, completely blind, severed optic nerve, that and one thing that surprised me was that he had 2 readers. He's reading this test. It's hours and hours and hours long, so we don't really have a comparable experience here. But the reader fell asleep. The primary reader fell, waiting, and so he had a secondary reader and they traded off because, I mean, that's it's tense, and because he'd asked to have it repeated. You think if you're staring at a test, and how many times you reread the question, and so he would ask for that over and over, and the reader was like, "Are you kidding me with this?" So that's just something that would never have occurred to me. That did come up.
Yeah, that's quite an anomaly, I think,
Yeah.
too, because I used to, when University of St. Thomas used to provide testing, I have administered a lot of the LSAT tests on weekends, and we did occasionally have an individual request accommodations. Usually it was extended time, but sometimes they do have an option to Braille. But the reading thing, and I think that was just that individual differences of falling asleep.
The tester didn't fall asleep, but the readers did, because it was like, and I still am astonished at that because of all the logic questions in that particular test. It's like, you're standing in line, everybody's wearing a different jacket, a different color jacket, and no person wearing an orange jacket is next to a person wearing a yellow jacket, and all these kind of give the order of the line. I'm like, how do you do that if you don't see? How do you do that if you've never been able to see, and colors, are not part of your,
But what sounds really foreign is they wouldn't know how to do it visually.
Right, I suppose.
If they were, that's the way they're used to processing information, that they may just change it. Okay, they have an O on there for orange. They have an R on their shirt for red, and that's just how you process that information. Given that, though, there may be some item bias there with, it's a lighter orange, and how does that, impact this, where that's based more on vision than knowledge.
I have a friend who is colorblind, and they didn't know it when he was a little kid, and they thought he was just dumb because he couldn't tell red from orange. And he just thought it was really, really subtle, like everything was kind of tan to him. And so he would guess right about half the time.
So I have a question, and I'm not asking you to give us an audit right now, but as you've kind of come through the building, I mean, looking at the door handles, and I'm looking at, our restroom facilities, and I'm looking at the space that we have provided. Would a disabilities audit be something we should invest in, or just from your eye shot, we're pretty, I mean, we have an elevator, I mean, we have the basics that would accommodate people with disabilities without having to do much more?
Yeah, I'm not as in tune with the other physical disabilities, as far as door width and all that, but yeah, it seems very accommodated. Typically with vision loss, though, it's up to that individual to have the skills to be able to travel through someplace safely. Although, with that being said, I did see, I don't recall having a lot of boxes or furniture or something in the way that would trip up an individual. But again, they should have, that white cane or that dog to navigate around. They should have those skills before they're ready for college.
All right, great, thank you.
A background color question, not the physical one, sorry. So you talked about the blue and the yellow having different impact. What if it's like olive, kind of greenish mustard, bordering mustard, bordering olive color, as a, in our new Moodle thing, a lot of things are coming with that background, which is a default color, so we don't have much choice. Is that
it's more contrast. Contrast always seems to be important. The bolder, the more differentiated you could make the text from the background, the better.
And what's the color palette? So I know that the yellow is the best, but then
increases contrast, but sometimes glare is an issue. So that's why, like a Zoom text or a Magic, the screen enlargement programs, they have options to change and inverse the contrast.
Okay, so they
So that
to manipulate it a little bit. Okay.
And I'm assuming that the program I use would work compatibly with the screen enlargement program to tailor that to the individual's needs.
If these are white letters and dark background, is it inverse colors? Is it still inheritable?
Yep, it should be.
Anything else, anybody?
The one thing, now that you do mention it, like in this room there is some glare. Some people see worse with fluorescent lighting because it is mutes things a little bit more, reduces the contrast. Other individuals, one of my coworkers, loves fluorescent lighting because it's all over her house. You can see the best with it. Also, you may need to, if you're having on a window, maybe have all the shades down in that room or all up. Again, that's going to be individualized. Some people prefer it a little darker. Some want all the light they can get.
All those sound like reasonable accommodations.
Yes. Yep.
Well, Maria, we sure appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All the information we share with this, and
Well, I really compliment you for asking the questions and being prepared for the students.
yeah, I think I've noticed that our student is very self-sufficient. She, seems to be able to